So today I'm really excited about this fight. It's Human Torch versus Iceman. And this fight is a lot like Thing versus Colossus, where it's just surprisingly really evenly matched. And like either one could win. It's one of those really good fights. But before we dive into the breakdown, we gotta start with talking about who these characters are, as always. So the Human Torch is the second most powerful member of the Fantastic Four, and the brother of Sue Richards. Due to an accident caused by cosmic radiation in space, he can manipulate fire, turn his entire body into it, and fly. But let's dive a little bit deeper into his powers. Johnny's body is covered in fire, which actually protects him from heat and flames, and he can easily absorb fire and explosions. He can create shapes and objects out of fire, and he can even control any fire within his sight, regardless of how that fire was formed. Johnny can also create duplicates of himself, weapons created out of flames, and is able to suck the moisture out of a person's body, and suck the heat out of somebody's body as well, which actually freezes the person. Don't know how that works, but it does. The Human Torch can shoot fire or use balls of flames as projectiles, which have been able to instantly melt a bulldozer, can melt through 2 feet of molybdenum. I don't even know how to say that, but it is the 6th highest melting point of any element, and he's also used his blast to knock back the Hulk and Silver Surfer, although it didn't actually do any lasting damage to either of them. Johnny can also go Nova and emit a Nova Flame, which is a multi-directional attack capable of reaching over 100,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and has been described as being similar to a nuclear blast, or Nova Heat, which is an offensive beam rivaling the heat of a normal star. This blast has even been used to decimate the Annihilation Wave. As Human Torch's body density changes, his body becomes lighter than air, giving him the ability to fly, and he can also fly at incredibly fast speeds. And then in the other corner of Iceman, the youngest member of the original X-Men, Bobby is an Omega level mutant, although it took some help from Emma Frost to realize this. Bobby Drake's control of ice is vast. He can create shields, clones, spikes, slides, and also freeze others. He currently teaches at the Dream Grey School for Higher Learning. Now Iceman used to just be able to encase himself in an icy armor, but he's now able to turn his entire body into a flexible form of organic ice. He can also freeze the moisture in the air and create objects like slides, ladders, and projectiles, can reform any part of his body in his ice form, and can also augment his shape and size. He's been known to add additional ice or jagged ice shards to his knuckles, and has been also seen growing over 100 feet tall, which grants him superhuman strength as well. If Bobby is damaged, he can reform damaged or missing parts. While this is physically and mentally taxing, this ability can even be used to reform his entire body if necessary. He's been able to temporarily freeze the Hulk in ice, knock the Juggernaut back with a beam of ice, and has even been able to shield the X-Men from a giant blast of fire. Iceman has also been able to drop things down to near absolute zero, can create a flash freeze, and freeze the flow of blood in an opponent's body. He can use his powers for effectively up to 5 hours, but after that he gets extremely tired, and his powers begin to become a bit dysfunctional. His powers are also dependent on the level of moisture that is in the air, but on Earth, he has access to an almost unlimited amount of moisture anywhere in the world, even in the desert. So who wins? Well, let's break it down. Now this fight is incredibly evenly matched, even though they are essentially complete opposites, and will require quite a bit to discuss. But that's fine by me because I don't know about y'all, but the breakdowns are my favorite part of these videos. Like the character introductions are fine and all, but that's just set up for the big battle. This is the fun part. We actually see how these two would fare against each other, would actually come out on top. But no chit chat, let's start talking about the fight. Now I think I'll just come right out and say it. After lots of research and contemplation, hours and hours of meditation, just soul searching and thinking and thinking and thinking, I believe that Human Torch wins. I know, for those supporting Iceman, I was a bit surprised too. At first glance, I thought Bobby would win, especially since he's an Omega level mutant, and Johnny is only the second most powerful member of the Fantastic Four, a team of 4. Now the first thing I believe we've got to talk about is the idea that Iceman would freeze the Human Torch. With most anybody else, Iceman can use his temperature control to manipulate the area around his opponents, or themselves directly, and freeze them. But that won't work with Johnny, because he can also control the temperature and manipulate the area around him to balance that out. And Human Torch is just too hot for Bobby to freeze directly. That won't happen. Look at it this way. Cold isn't one unique thing. Cold is just the absence of heat, just like darkness is the absence of light. That means that heat will always have an innate advantage over cold. So if Bobby did manage to overwhelm Johnny and freeze everything around him, he's not going to do much Johnny's own flame. There's also the idea that Iceman could freeze the blood and torch his body, which he's really only done once before with Emma Frost. But even if he's just done it once, let's say he tries it again with Johnny. It won't work. Torch has said several times that his body is at a temperature of 1000 degrees. So it's not like he is just surrounded by flames and his body is a normal temperature. Johnny's entire body is incredibly hot. Trying to freeze his blood would be like trying to freeze a boiling pot of water while it's still on the stove. It wouldn't work. Then there's also the idea that Iceman could drop Human Torch to absolute zero, which is where there's absolutely no heat or kinetic motion. Now, to be honest, I don't know if Bobby can reach absolute zero. He has said before that he can. Then they can only get close to absolute zero, and back and forth, so it's not really clear. But even if he can drop Johnny down to absolute zero, that has actually happened to him before. He was frozen to absolute zero by Aaron, the rogue watcher, but Johnny was actually able to raise his body temperature and overcome it. Then we also have to talk about Iceman's defense against fire. This is actually really effective against natural fire and fire users who don't have control over fire the same way Johnny does. Basically, the way it works is Bobby cools the natural air around him, and the fire folds around him. While this is effective for an explosion or a flamethrower, Johnny has incredible control over fire and can create complex shapes with it, and it shouldn't be too hard for him to just direct a fireball through the cooled air currents and hit Bobby. Then if Bobby tries to use his surrounding bodies of water to turn into an ice giant or enlarge his size, I don't know if that's going to be able to take down Torch. Mostly because he can go Nova, and just has so much raw power and heat to evaporate Iceman. I mean, Iceman has evaporated by a whole lot less than heat, upwards of 1 million degrees. And that actually leads us into an important piece of this fight. Iceman has been defeated before, specifically by fire users, but that hasn't stopped him, as he's able to remain a sentient water vapor or a gas will eventually reform in a physical body. But let's actually take a look at the times that this has taken place. Aurora and Northstar hit him with an explosion that destroyed one room and defeated him. And if I remember right, it took Bobby a whole issue to reform his body. And after he had done that, he was so weak that he needed to be admitted to the sickbay. Iceman has also never shown the ability to turn into a gas at will. But even if he could, there would really be no point. I've heard a theory that Iceman could turn into water vapor, travel inside Johnny's body, and then kill him from the inside out. But that theory is just wrong from start to finish. First, Bobby has never shown that he can turn into gas at will. And secondly, he would never be able to get inside Johnny's body because it would just be too hot. I mean, the heat can melt literal bullets before they touch him. It should be able to get rid of simple water vapor. And for that matter, the heat should be able to melt any ice attacks too. But I won't get into that. Iceman's greatest advantage in this fight is that he essentially can't be killed and will always return, but he can still be knocked out or evaporated and melted, and that has happened before by fire users a lot less powerful than Johnny Storm. Then I think I've argued well how the Human Torch will be able to stand up to most anything Bobby can throw at him and will eventually defeat him. So in my opinion, the Human Torch wins. But what do y'all think? I would love to hear your thoughts, so sound off in the comments down below. Also, be sure to hit the subscribe button for videos just like this one every single week.